What is really the fault line issue in America? The stuff that shifts the tectonic plates. Is it race, class, or gender? The big three. Now, we debate this as kind of a philosophical experiment. But the fact is, year by year, you could attach almost every story in the paper to one of those three. Those are narratives. Race, class, gender, big enveloping things. Now, these narratives are sometimes fact-based, reality-based, so-called. Sometimes they're practically fact-free. Sometimes they're hijacked, filled with mischief, with destructive outcomes. Other times, well, they're narratives that we embrace. So part of what we do here at events like this, and we'll have other events next year, is to try to think clearly about that. Because the fact is, as we all know from our own lives, we all become our stories. And as a nation, I think it's right that those stories be of social progress and of justice. So that's part of what we try to do. So we've got a terrific lineup today of three consequential actors in public narrative on, well, one of the giants, gender. Very briefly, everybody knows everything already about gender. It's been the central, in some ways, fundamental social issue of this era. Let's state two narratives very briefly, which bring us to this day, actually brings us to 2007, before the great financial crash, side by side. One, if you remember, in the 1970s, was a time in which the United States felt a kind of shot to its confidence, a bruise to its confidence. Watergate, the oil shocks, all of a sudden we were looking at an age of limits. Jimmy Carter tried to talk about this, kind of botched it. He was followed by Ronald Reagan, who said it was morning in America, and he deregulated so much on the American landscape. Now, we are a capital society, and he said, let's free up capital. And that created an extraordinary explosion of innovations on Wall Street. Some of us are old enough to remember the 1980s. Some of you undergraduates not. People wore yellow ties. That should tell you a lot. Suspenders. The joke was that money was sex, so they should put the mirror above the desk of the trader. It was all about America's restored confidence. And of course, Reagan said it was morning in America, and people felt he was right. A great explosion occurred, and that brings us to 2007. Another trend moving side by side with that. The 1970s, as all of you know, was a time in which many of the hopes and promises since women get the right to vote in the 1920s are finally coming to fullness. Women are finally rising. And they rise with enormous power through the 80s and the 90s. The lives that my mother could never have imagined are now the lives within reach. We come all the way up to 2007, and we see the lives of women in America, though much is yet to be won in terms of diversity and equality, well, they're lives that are as different as night and day from generations of women that preceded them. So we get up to 2007, and we have more than half of women are getting undergraduate degrees, and more than half are getting graduate degrees. Now it's up to about 60%. Women are rising in many industries in America. Women are getting at least something closer to parity on pay. 2007. By then you've got the central and major province of America driving the economy, one of the last male-dominated realms left in the United States. Finance, Wall Street. Not just driving the economy, but driving the culture. And in terms of the women who have risen to challenge it, the great powerful regulators in the nation's capital of public purpose, Washington, are women.